I was helping this family, and this was my third time with this family. So I knew them very, very well. I knew, I knew how this mama labored. And she'd been texting me kind of off and on all day saying, I'm having some stuff going on. They were at a birthday party. No big deal. And she said, I'll just call you when I get home. And when she got home, she called and said, she texted me and said, things are really picking up. And a few minutes later, her husband called and said, I think you need to meet us at the hospital because it's going really fast suddenly. And so I was like, okay, well, I lived at the time only a couple miles from the hospital. So I said, I'll meet you there. So I took my time because they were at least, 10 minutes away. And I went to the hospital, and I just pulled in and was just getting out and going towards the front door. And all of a sudden this car comes screeching into the parking lot. And sure enough, it's them. And he flings open the door and he screams, "The baby is coming!" And so I just, go over to her, and she's like this, right? Her eyeballs are this big. And she is panicking. She's in absolute panic. And she's like, "The baby is coming out. The baby's coming out." And so I said, "It's okay. We're here. We're right where we're supposed to be. You're going to be okay." And I just said, "Can I reach down? I just want to reach down and see if I can feel the baby at all." And she was fully clothed and everything. I just wanted to see if there was a baby really right there. And there was not. So I knew we had some time. So I told her husband to go grab a wheelchair. And we went in. And she is, surging and pushing, and everything is super intense. And the nurse comes in to check her, and she says she's 3 centimeters. And I actually laughed because I knew this mom, and her eyes were rolling back in her head. She was in full transition and had a severe urge to push. But she had a strange look on her face. Thanks, Gretchen. Hi. Hi, you guys. Hi, Teresa. Anyway, so she had this, the nurse had this strange look on her face, and she called another nurse in, and they do another exam, and they tell her to stop pushing because they feel something like a hand. The lady said, "I think it's the hand coming out." And so then they go get a head nurse, and there's an ultrasound machine, and they bring an ultrasound machine, and they're saying to her, "Do not push. The baby is transverse and the arm is coming out." And so, everybody's in shock, and I'm having her blow because the urge to push is beyond what she can even manage. And so we're breathing, we're, doing all this stuff, and the head nurse comes in, and she checks her, and she goes, it's the baby's face. So they do an ultrasound again, and this time the head nurse is like, yeah, the baby is just face presentation. So the baby's lower face was coming out first. And she says, "But you know what? This is, by the way, my client's very tall. I think she's close to 6 foot tall. She's a big woman." And the nurse checks around and says, "But it feels like, this is your 3rd baby. It feels like the baby's got plenty of room. We're doing fine." So she goes back to pushing, and in comes the doctor, who, by the way, is not her physician, but just the one on call for the practice. And he does an exam. And he goes, "Yeah, go ahead and give me a little push." And by the way, he doesn't even say anything to her. He doesn't even introduce himself. He just goes in and does the exam. And the whole time the baby's on the monitor and doing great, showing no signs of distress at all. And he goes in, and all of a sudden he goes, "Stop pushing." And he stands up and he says, "We're doing a cesarean." And he says it to the room. He doesn't say anything to the mom. "We're doing a cesarean." And she said, and the mom goes, no, why? I don't want a cesarean. I just want to push my baby out." And he goes, "If you continue to push, you're going to snap your baby's neck." Just like that. No discussion, just boom. You're going to snap your baby's neck. And she's, of course, just absolutely horrified. And she's just looking at me like, what do I do? And I'm like, we're blowing. We're going to blow through this. We're going to help you not to push. And so I keep doing it, and she's just begging, please, please, I just need to push my baby out. I just need to push my baby out. And she's pleading with me and crying. And I'm looking, and the doctor's standing there waiting for her to make a decision. Like, everyone is stopped in the room. No one is moving. Everyone is just looking at her, and she's begging to push her baby out. This makes me emotional. This was like 8 years ago. And she finally said, okay, like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And everyone just took off and left to prep this OR, and left the one nurse, the first nurse that was there, and said, you know, like, she's the one that said the dilation was 3 centimeters. Anyways, and so she's talking, and the mom is desperately trying not to push, but, like, you know, every minute and a half, she's got this urge to push. And I'm looking at the monitor, and the baby is, like, according to the monitor, baby is showing no signs of distress. And I just leaned down and I said, Mama, you've got to trust your instincts about this. And I just whispered in her ear, you got to trust your instincts about this. And she said, I need to push this baby out. And I said, I'm here to support you. And she started to push. And then the nurse said to us, hey, I'm going to go ahead and place a catheter. And at first I was like, wait, you know, like, she doesn't have any pain meds. Like, I mean, she's battling here. And then all of a sudden I remembered, you know, a couple of times with midwives at home births where they emptied the bladder to give the baby more room. And I thought, okay, like, and so I whispered that to the mama, and she was like, okay, do it. And they did. She did a red robin and emptied her bladder, and all of a sudden this mama got the most unbelievable urge to push, and she pushed so hard, and her baby started coming down, and she's like, the baby is coming, and she starts screaming, the baby's coming out, I can feel the burning. And the nurse lifts the sheet up, and she looks, and she said under her breath, oh my God, the baby's coming. And she said it very quietly, and she ran to the door, and she said, I need some help in here. And I thought they were all going to come in and be ready to deliver. And instead, they started unlocking her bed and rolling her to the OR. And she was begging, and she was like, please, please, I can feel the baby coming down. Please check me. It's fine. The baby's coming out. The baby's coming out. And she's begging. And the doctor comes, and he goes, what is going on here? And I say to him, she's can feel the baby coming. She wants you to check her. And he said, no, we're doing surgery. And she's begging him. She literally begged him, please just check me. Please just check me. And I was standing there feeling so helpless. And her husband, by the way, who's there the whole time, is super, I mean, just sweet guy, but he did not know what to do. And I just said to him, do not let them cut her open without checking her. And I was screaming it in the hospital. And it was like, it was the most horrific violation of a woman's rights that I'd ever witnessed. And there was no way I could just stand there and not say something and do something. And I was just screaming. And the head nurse came out, and she goes, what is going on? And I said, he begged her. She feels the baby's coming out, and he begged her. I mean, she begged him to check her, and he refused. And she goes, okay, I'll go see what I can do. And she went in, and they went into the OR, and I just stood outside the OR with her sister, and we cried. And I felt so just absolutely horrified. You're right, Linda. I'm sorry. I don't know how to change to make a trigger warning. And she stood there. I mean, I just stood there out, and he came out a few minutes later, the doctor, and he just looked at me and he goes, it won't be long now. And he walked over to the doctor's lounge, and he was just in there for a split second, and he turned right back around, and then he goes, which one of you is the doula? He knew exactly who the doula was. He didn't actually need to ask me that question. But I said, I am. And he got up in my face and he said, you better watch it, young lady. And I said, what you're doing is wrong right now. She begged you to check her. And he goes, you better watch it. I will kick you out of this hospital. And all I could do was hang my head at that point. And he went back in, and it was, what seemed like forever. And I kept waiting to hear a baby cry, and I never did. And then at some point, the doctor came out, another doctor, the second doctor, and suddenly he said, well, she did it herself. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, the baby came out. And apparently what had happened was that when the doctor went back in, the dad said to the doctor, I need you to explain to me why you're about to cut my wife open. And so he started explaining, well, in the meantime, everybody was still prepping the room, and Mama just kept pushing. And out came the baby right on the table without anybody. She didn't even have her hands on the baby. The baby came out right onto the table. And in fact, the doctor was explaining to the dad when he saw the baby come out. And he's like, oh my gosh, I have to go catch your baby. And he went and he picked the baby up off the bed. And so that mama avoided a cesarean, but only because she just trusted herself. And when every single thing around her was absolute chaos, and just the doctor was so awful. And it was the day that I know that there's a difference between being a doula and being an activist, y'all. I know there's a lot of debate in this world about this, but there is absolutely a difference. And in that day, I absolutely turned into an activist. It was the day that I stepped out of my doula role and I said, no more. No more. I will never witness anything like that again without speaking up. And now it's why I started Improving Birth. I mean, that was such a defining moment for me. And I'm so glad that I shared it, because it's, it's really reminding me of why I keep doing this, even though it's so freaking hard. Being an activist is hard work, y'all, and I know so many of you that have logged in here that are listening and watching, it's because you're an activist too. An advocate, an activist, whatever you want to call it. By the way, I didn't even know I was an activist. It took until an article, somebody was writing an article about improving birth, and they called me a birth activist. And I was like, I'm a birth activist? I just thought I was a doula, just a doula. But it's very difficult to not become an activist as a doula when you are witnessing what's happening to families during labor everywhere, every day. When those mamas, I just read Michelle from Florida just posted about a mama who was being pressured into an induction at 40 weeks for no medical indication, and, used her voice and didn't sign up for the induction and gave birth this morning naturally without any meds. And it was a 11.5-pound baby, all healthy and beautiful. I love that stuff. Anyways, hey, there's my story. That's my story. And tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, we're sending out an email asking what your story is. What's your story? How did you become an activist? What was the moment? And I think what's sad is that most of you have a story from just this last month, this last week. We've heard, read, experienced, whatever. It's why we've got to come together and work together and make this a no-brainer anymore. This sort of thing can't, this power struggle, because that's what all of this boils down to. It's a power struggle. Women want control over their bodies for some crazy reason. And providers need to understand that it's not an insult. When a woman says something that's different than what you're recommending, it's not an insult. It really isn't. It's not an insult to your education. It's not. It's because they have an opinion, which is crazy because they read on the internet. Everything is at the fingertips. Anyways, I could go on all day. Thanks for watching, y'all. And hopefully you'll check in for the next 21 days. 21-day challenge. Have a good one. Thanks.